We will be covering part 3 of your senior lesson. This is going to cover the college application process. It will be important and very helpful to you if you can reach your Battlefield College Application Process checklist. This has been emailed to every student, to your Prince William County email address, and to your parents. There are very helpful links in this document that will also assist you as you are completing your application and planning for financial support, including Mrs. Bridges' scholarship workshop and the videos that have been recorded along the steps of your application, such as matching your common application in Naviance, requesting your transcript, and requesting a letter of recommendation. It's important to remember that you as the student are at the center of any decision that will be made to make sure that it is your best fit. So today we're going to cover a review of your best fit, the application criteria, a few more pathways, and how to pay for your education. There are important handouts that go along with this lesson. These can be found in the Counseling Canvas course that every student is assigned to, as well as the documents that have been emailed to you by Mrs. Bridges to your Prince William County email address. All right, let's get started. So we're going to talk about colleges and how to figure out which colleges I should apply to. It's very important to remember college is a match to be made, not a prize to be won. So we want to think about best fit. We want you to reflect on your experiences in education thus far. So how have you experienced education in the school setting as well as other settings such as your job and at home, things that you have had mentors by your side, thinking about what situations have been the best fit for you, where you have been most comfortable and able to learn and challenge yourself. So you want to think about the college campus culture. What further career development does this college have? So are there alumni getting jobs? Are they working in the field that you want to work in? Another very important question is, does this college have the major I want to study? So an example of this is Virginia Tech doesn't have nursing, right? So you wouldn't apply to Virginia Tech if you want to pursue nursing. So thinking about financial aid, are you wanting to make sure that you have financial opportunities at this college? So needs-based scholarships, merit-based scholarships. There are some colleges that only have one very large full ride merit scholarship and they don't offer any other merit scholarships. So this is like an example for UVA. So it's important that as you're planning, if you're seeking institutions like this, that you understand that if you do not have a needs-based situation, that you should be planning to pay for a full cost of tuition and room and board at that institution if you are accepted. So environment is very important. Do you want to know your teachers? Have you thrived in a smaller setting where you've gotten to know your teacher, worked closely with your teacher in the past? Or are you a self-starter and you work well on your own and you feel like you would be confident in a large lecture hall class of 300, 400 students? And another thing to think about is testing. Does the school require testing? Of course, given the current situations, many schools have gone test optional, meaning based on your GPA score, you could qualify to apply to this school with no SAT scores or ACT scores. Please be mindful, we'll talk about this later, that you want to think about what scholarships might still require those and if the honors programs still require those. So consider why a school would require testing. A very good example of this is Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has always required SATs or ACTs, and they do this because it's a good example of their school culture, meaning many of your grades will come from your assessments and tests in your classes. So if you struggle with testing and testing is not a good, accurate representation of your abilities, you want to consider, well, maybe this school may or may not be a good fit for me based on my comfort level with testing. So an example of this is some programs, some majors at a school like this might require you to pass a culminating test instead of doing a project at the end of your major. So being mindful of that. Always asking yourself, what is required of this college and what does that say about that college? Remember, we're always thinking about best fit. All right, so just to touch on lesson number 1, the Naviance lesson, it's very important that you as a senior are using Naviance. If you are not sure what you want to major in, I want you to log into Naviance, look at your career assessments, your personality assessment, your do what you are. Look at that data, retake the tests and see what might be a good fit based on what areas of interest you have. You want to sign up for any college visits that are coming to Battlefield. Those are the representatives that are actually going to be looking at your applications most of the time. You need to maintain your college application list in Naviance because this is where you request your transcripts and your letters of recommendations, both for counselors and teachers. To review that process, you will look at lesson 1 or look at the videos on your college application checklist that we reviewed in the beginning. Scattergrams and Supermatch are 2 of the top resources used in Naviance. So Supermatch is where you can put in the criteria that you want in a college. Even if you want to do an ROTC program, you can pick that branch and it will show you colleges that have your major and that branch, for it, just as an example of what you might want. So it'll give you a list of colleges, both in-state, out-of-state, whatever region you select. That is Supermatch in college, in Naviance Student under the Colleges tab. And lastly, scattergrams, which we'll look at in a second. This is going to give you Battlefield data. Remember, when you apply to a college, you're compared to your peers at Battlefield because of the opportunities available at Battlefield, right? So you're going to be compared to your classmates. So the scattergram data will give you the information as far as GPA, SAT score, ACT scores, and if these students got in, were accepted, if they were denied or waitlisted. And you can see that to give yourself an idea of what's my level of risk in admissions to this school. So you're going to log into Naviance. This is going to be, we want you to log in through Clever. So this will be your Office 365 login credentials. If that gets confusing or doesn't work for some reason, you will use your student number as your login. And your password is whatever password you created for Naviance. So you would click forgot password, you'll get an email to your Prince William County email address with a verification code. Only do this once if you forgot your password, because otherwise you'll get multiple verification codes and won't know which one to use. So primarily we want you to log in through Clever using your Office 365. It's easier to remember. Alrighty, so the college admissions decisions. Remember, we want you to think about what is the best fit for you. So it's about attending the right school, not the brand name school. So sometimes it happens to be both. So you're going to be thinking about applying to between 3 to 7 schools, depending on what level of risk and schools you're looking for. So we want you to think about making sure that you have multiple opportunities when it comes to applying and receiving admissions decisions. So it is a myth to think about, I'm just going to apply to as many schools as possible and then see which one I get into and go from there. We don't want you doing that because you'll be flooding the pool and you're not being thoughtful about your decisions. And oftentimes what happens in situations like this is a student ends up with a choice, a school that they got attended, they were offered attendance, and they were offered a scholarship, so their family wants them to attend, and it happened to be a school where the student never really wanted to go in the first place. So the conversations with families need to happen in the beginning. What schools would you actually like to attend? Which schools have your majors and programs and a culture where you're going to feel comfortable and you're going to thrive and grow and challenge yourself? They need to all be schools where you would actually attend, okay? So when we think about a reach school, this is oftentimes like your dream school where you're like, oh, I've always wanted to go there. I'm not sure it's kind of out of reach, but I just won't be able to sleep at night if I don't apply. Fantastic. Apply to that school. That's going to be like your reach school. Some students may not have a reach school, okay? So you don't need to have a reach school. All right, our targeted school is going to be the school that meets the student's goals, the admission criteria, might possibly be slightly more competitive than an anticipated school, okay? So this is going to be a school where you're interested in going, not quite sure if you'll get in or not. Your data is in line with admissions data based on battlefield information. So it's more of a targeted school. Anticipated school is the school that meets the student's goals. It's anticipated that you will be admitted to this school and possibly offered merit scholarships as well as an honors program or research opportunities. So while an anticipated school is very, very likely that you'll get in, it might also come with additional benefits. So again, all of these schools need to be schools that the student will actually want to attend. So applying to an anticipated school that the student does not want to attend is not going to be in the student's favor because that might end up being the only school the student gets into. So we want to think diversely about the student's goals, wishes, and financial need when we think about the different criteria and the different schools that a student will be applying to. This is a great example of looking at the scattergram data in Naviance. So what's the likelihood that I'll get into X school? So you can pull up that school in Naviance and you will see battlefield data. And this is important data to look at because the admission data on a college's website is very vague and all encompassing. Remember, you are going to be evaluated by your admissions rep and panel in our area. So in our region, and then they're gonna look more closely at battlefield. So these are battlefield students. Green students were accepted, blue was waitlisted, red was denied. So you can kind of get an idea. And if you didn't take the SAT or ACT, you can look at your PSAT scores and recalculate them to see, well, where would I kind of fall? But be generous and graceful with yourself, knowing that that PSAT is a year old already, okay? So you would already have done better on the SAT anyways. So this is just to give you an idea of, well, what's my admission risk? Where would I fall? Where would these schools fall? So I really like to have a chart like this for my students and encourage you to make one. We will attach the document that I use when we're normally in person. But this is really a great tool so that you get an idea of, based on battlefield students, where do I fall? Please, please be mindful that GPAs have been a bit inflated this year. So this is the first year, the first graduating class that is reaping the benefits of additionally weighted courses, like advanced courses that you might have taken as a freshman or sophomore, junior, where those classes were not previously weighted. So students' GPAs right now are actually higher than what previous schools or students would have had at this point in their academic career. So please remember, this is an inflated GPA. Colleges do not look at weighted GPA. This is so important because every division and county and region across the country calculates GPA differently. Some have an 8-point scale, some use percentages, so some use only letter grades. So admissions reps are going to see what classes did the student take and how did you do in that class, meaning what grade did you earn. All right. Some colleges will recalculate GPA with an unweighted GPA, and I'd encourage you to do that. Some applications will actually ask the student to calculate that and submit it in your application. This is really important, okay, because while it's a good idea to think about how do I fall in battlefields, externally, a GPA is irrelevant in admissions. They're going to look at really what rigor did I take, where did I challenge myself in my academics, and how did I do in those classes, especially right now not having an SAT score. They're going to look at your academic performance. So if you didn't do well freshman and sophomore year, I encourage you to write about that in your essay. Add context to anything that has a red flag, anything that you wish you could erase or cover up. I want you to target it and write about it. That way you can add context and information to those red flags. All right, there's always a story. There's always so much more going on than what is perceived on a blanket transcript and a blanket application. So let your story be known. Of course, we know with SATs, ACTs, there's such movement going on. Many schools are moving to score report optional, including UVA, Virginia Tech, many schools that traditionally always require it. So please read the fine print on the score report optional on every college that you're applying to. Again, this shouldn't be a lot of research because you've narrowed your schools down to 5 to 7 schools. So you're going to look more deeply into what do these schools require. All right, so if a school is very much score report optional, they say that means that it is the student's choice. Okay, when do I know to submit my SAT scores? Well, if your SAT scores or ACT scores are very strong and you feel very proud of them, then you want to submit them. It's not going to hurt your application, okay? If you feel like your scores are lower, then you don't submit them and it will not hurt you. Schools that are saying it's score report optional or saying it's up to the student, we will use whatever they provide in the application for the admissions decision. Okay, so it's really up to the student. And when we talk about looking at the school, we want you to think about, well, if the school isn't requiring the SAT or ACT, I just want to look more closely to see, well, is it the same thing with the honors program? Because if it's one of my anticipated schools, I also want to apply to the honors program just to give myself more opportunities because I want to get that job after I graduate, right? The goal of college is to get a job in the field I want to work in. Then you just want to make sure to take that extra step, make sure the honors program doesn't require it. What we are hearing at colleges is honors programs are following very closely to the admissions. If admissions isn't requiring SAT or ACT, then they're not requiring it either. But do be mindful, there are some local scholarships and some scholarships at the college level that might still ask for an SAT or ACT. So be mindful, do your research, and ask your counselor or myself questions if you need to process this decision. All right, so some schools that are very traditional with being score report optional, meaning if your GPA is high enough, they don't need your scores, are so Christopher Newport, George Mason, Hampton, James Madison, ODU, Radford, Roanoke, VCU. Also, I want you to think about, and Mary Washington, the list goes on. I want you to think about, of these 5 to 7 schools I want to apply to, what their deadlines are and what their scholarship requirements are. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. I want you to think about the deadlines because sometimes you just have to apply early action to be considered for scholarship. So that's like VCU. We'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so in place of SAT scores and ACT scores, some colleges are saying they're buffing up their application. So they're saying, well, we want to see maybe a graded assignment. We want you to submit a copy of like a creative writing assignment or a project that you did with the teacher's grades and comments. So there might be additional information that the college is asking in the application, which can be really fantastic because this can provide a more holistic approach in the application process. So they might also ask for your AP test scores if you've taken the AP tests in the past. Of course, your junior year, we know there were some oddities with the AP testing online at home, and that was very bizarre. So the other thing is most colleges are expanding the resume feature in their application. So they're saying, great, this is what you did, and this was a brief description, but we want you to write a little bit more about what that actually means to you and what you did. So an expanded resume. So there are really great ways that colleges are taking a more holistic approach to make sure that a student is well represented in their application. All right, so talking about college, there are 2 pathways in college that you can take right out of high school. Of course, you can go the community college route or you can go right into your 4-year college. All right, some pointers with community college. If you do 2 years at the community college, so Nova or Lord Fairfax, as an example, you do 2 years at this community college, you earn the GPA that's required to transfer to UVA or Tech or JMU or Hampton, and you do that guaranteed admissions program, you have 2 years left at that four-year college. Okay, so you have 2 years left, and you've saved close between $30,000 to $40,000 because you didn't pay for room and board, you didn't have a meal plan, you didn't pay that level of tuition. You were maybe at home, you were also working, so you were saving money. So there is a fantastic way to go through community college to earn that 4-year degree from the college of your dreams, of your choice, while also saving significant amount of money and still getting a college experience. So we also want you to think about, if you choose to go community college route, who your professors might be. These are often adjunct professors that are working in the field that you might be interested in, or in the field of the class that you're taking. So you can ask very specific questions. Of course, the application is free. The classes are much smaller, so you will get to know your professor. You can get involved with the institution, and there are just as many of the supports at a community college with their career center, as well as looking into local internships to build your resume. Remember, the goal of college is to get a job after college in the field you want to work in. So, if you want to get that job, having experience in the field while you're in college is a fantastic way to go. I know some amazing students that have chosen to stay in this area, and they're doing internships with the government or specific agencies while going to college at Nova, saving money, possibly even getting tuition reimbursement through that internship program. So it's really important students are doing their research based on their interests and what's available. We are very lucky in our area to be close to the government, to be close to a lot of agencies that are doing some pretty neat work. All right. So of course, the student can also apply to go right into a four-year college, planning to be at that college for 4 years and complete their degree. So there's the on-campus living experience for freshman, sophomore year, and oftentimes your professor could be doing some research in the field, but primarily in undergrad, you will see maybe a graduate student, so a student that's earning their master's degree or PhD, teaching some of the general classes that you would take your freshman and sophomore year. Also, there's typically the SAT, ACT required. Of course, more schools are going score report optional. Some COVID updates with all of this is to think about the experience that you might get, obviously, during a pandemic. So, what this means is if you might be at home doing virtual classes for some reason, because of a pandemic or something going on, you want to think about the cost that you're paying for that school, that class that you're taking at home on the computer, versus that cost that you would be taking a class at home on the computer from a community college. Okay. It's typically a third of the cost for community college. So four-year college is going to be times three for that class. So if you are getting that same experience of thinking about what's going on in the world and making these decisions, we have no idea what to expect for next fall. But these are good questions to ask when you do your college visits and college tours. All right, your college essays are really important. This is a place for you to write about yourself. Some tips for your college essay is to think about, what do you want to share with the institution? What do you want this admissions rep to know about you that's not conveyed in your transcript? Start with those bullet points before you pick your essay prompt, because the point is for you to pick a prompt that fits the information you want to add to your application, okay? So doing it in a reverse order, write down things that you want a college to know about you and your experience in your journey, then picking an essay prompt that fits that information is a fantastic way to go. And also to remember to talk about yourself. This is going to be the most uncomfortable writing assignment that you might ever do, because you're going to be writing a lot about yourself. It might feel a little uncomfortable, but think of it like an interview. So many times I read essays from students and they've written a lot about maybe their grandparent that has been really significant in their life. or another person that's been really significant in their life, and the college would love to admit that person that has been really significant in their life. But the college doesn't learn much about the student. So it's really important to think about, what do you want the school to know about you, and what story can you tell within your journey that is a good example of that characteristic, or that future thought process that you have. All right. So reach out to your counselor, or Mrs. Bridges, myself, if you have questions or need to process this. We will have workshops on the essay writing as well. So letters of recommendation are also very important because it adds extra information to your application. Okay, so how do I pick what teachers? Some more elite institutions, they might say, well, we want you to pick certain teachers in certain academic areas. That is also not very common, okay? So it's very rare that you have to pick um, teachers in certain classes. All right, that being said, it could still happen. So be sure that you're checking your requirements of those 5 to 7 schools. Okay, remember, you're not having to know the requirements for every college in the country, just your 5 to 7 schools. What do they require for letters of recommendation? Some schools, they say it's optional. We'll take 1 letter maybe if you want to send it. Some schools won't take any letters. So Virginia Tech will not take a letter at all. Okay, these are important things for you to know, because we don't want you also asking 5 teachers to write 5 letters when you only need 1. So be mindful. You can also check your letter of recommendation requirements for Common App schools in Naviance and in your Common Application. So once you've matched your Common App in Naviance, where you go to request the letter of recommendation, see that video on your checklist that I've made for you, you'll see all your schools listed and how many letters that school will actually take, okay? So all that information is there for you if it's a Common App school. If it's not a Common App school, then you want to check the admission requirements on the college's website. All right, back to how to choose which teacher. Oftentimes, let's go back to the red flag analogy. If there's a red flag on your transcript, so say you got a C in AP functions trig, okay? You might want to reach out to that teacher, because maybe the major you want to study in is going to be in the math and sciences field. You're going to be pursuing a bachelor's of science. So you might want to have a teacher write about that. And what that teacher might write about is how you have persevered through some difficulties that you had in that class. So how you stayed after school, how you worked with that teacher really closely. You might want to write in one of your essays how you learned about yourself, like you finally met your match in math and you really learned how to teach yourself and how to study. So these are really important things, because you take that C and you make it into an A. You make it into an A because what you've learned from that experience is something that can't be taught in the classroom, okay? That's something that can't be measured on a transcript. This is why your letters are important. So thinking about how many letters you need, who would be a good fit, and what you really want this letter to convey. All right, and we are encouraging, we've done a training with the teachers. Nobody should be repeating your resume. Your resume is already in your application. So this letter is a time for the teacher to talk about you, how they've experienced you, and in what environment. So whether it was a coach, whether it was somebody who, it was a class, or in a club, okay? So thinking about what you might want to share with this teacher to remind them of your contributions in that environment. Counselor letters are done based on request. So if you need a counselor letter, so if your school requires a counselor letter, again, please look up your recommendation requirements. You need to go to Naviance Student at the very bottom of the home screen, click on your counselor, and they each have an individual link or interview questions that you need to complete. We ask for 10 to 15 school days to write your letters, because we want to write a very strong holistic letter. And remember, your class is almost 770 students. So thinking about how many letters we are processing, and we want this letter to be a true representation of who you are. So giving us that time and giving your teachers time to write letters is really important. All right, so watch the video on letters of recommendation. I go through more pointers. So you are more than a GPA and a test score. So colleges are moving to a holistic approach. As we know, we talked about letters of recommendation. We want you to tell your story, share your journey, and share how you're unique. Be as vulnerable and transparent as you're comfortable being. So, what else do you do? Okay, it's really important, this holistic process. Colleges want to know, what are you doing in your free time? So, if you have a job outside of school, this is really important. Okay, what have you been doing during COVID? What have you been doing at home? Have you been reading, listening to podcasts? How are you growing? How are you contributing to the world around you? Do you babysit? Do you help? How do you help support your family? Do you contribute? And in what communities? How are you contributing? These are questions to think about and what you want to share within your letters. So, reflecting on what you want the college to know about you first. So, at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of your life, I want to be able to say I contributed more than I criticized. This is a quote from Brene Brown. She's a shame researcher and a strong contributor in leadership in very, very large companies, and she does a lot of work. So this is just a really great reminder to think about, how have I contributed, or how do I want to contribute in the future? What have I learned about myself if I haven't done that in high school, right? Because you may not have been able to contribute, or you haven't really had the strength or the courage to be vulnerable in that way. Well, what do you want to do differently? How do you want to contribute at that college, at that institution? Thinking about those prompts. How do you want to cultivate change? Okay, when we're choosing an institution, so we want you to cast a wide net based on your best fit schools, based on the schools that you're interested in, so that you have choices when your acceptance letters come in. Okay, you've worked very hard and we want you to have choices. So remember, we want you to stick in that anticipated and target range for your colleges. Okay, your reach schools are really going to be those dream schools where you say, oh, I just won't be able to sleep at night if I don't apply. Fine, apply. But that's one school, that's $80, $90, whatever, one application. And I want you to spend a lot of time on the 3 to 7. I keep saying max is about 7, okay? If you're applying to more than 7, I want you to ask yourself, why am I applying to more to 7? And what is it about each of these schools that's different that interests me? Why would I attend there, okay? In the counseling campus course, I also have a spreadsheet to help you all stay on track. So there's a lot of resources in there. So when you're thinking about choosing the institution, I want you to think about who's teaching these courses. So thinking, this is just an example of something to think about. Okay, is it a graduate student? Is it a professor that's mainly doing research? So, their agreement with the institution is they have to teach one class, but they're mainly doing research. Professors that are there to focus on teaching. Is it an adjunct professor that's working in the field and also teaching? So thinking about what are the benefits to the types of teachers that you might get and at what institution, okay? So another thing to think about as an example are, what are the benefits of attending a school where I meet or beat the average acceptance? Okay, so this is like your anticipated, your low risk school, or your school where you meet your target school. Okay, so there might be additional opportunities that come from a school like that, where of course you get in, right? You get in. They might also offer you merit-based scholarships. You might want to apply to the honors program to make it a little bit more challenging for you, but then it pulls you even closer to people that are working in the field that you want to study. So then you get exposure to internships and co-ops where you're making money, learning about things within the industry that you're interested in and adding to your resume. Okay, so you're getting training and research opportunities. This is the stuff we talk about. This is amazing. Okay, this are the things that students miss out on when they don't look more closely into maybe a more targeted or anticipated school, and they're focused just on a brand name. Okay, doesn't mean that a brand name school doesn't have these opportunities, because they do. But if you think about where you fall in a brand name school, am I more like a typical fish in the pond, or am I going to be the top of my class? Okay, thinking about where you fall in your rank is a larger predictor of success and opportunities at the institution level and after graduation. There is research with Malcolm Gladwell that you can look into that goes more deeply into that. But this is why we want students to think about their best fit. All right. So when should you apply? We get this question all the time. So early action is, I'm taking action early, okay? Think about running. I'm just going to get this done early. I'm going to find out early. All good. Early decision. Okay, I'm applying early, but my decision is made for me. Okay, early decision is binding, meaning you forego the opportunity to make any choices when other admissions decisions roll in. So if you get into your early decision school, you are attending that school regardless of financial aid, regardless of financial packages, regardless of opportunities that might roll in from some of those low risk schools where, oh no, I got a full ride at this school, but I got into my early decision school. You are going to your early decision school. So be mindful. I ask colleges all the time, what is the benefit to my student to apply early decision? The only answer that they can give me is, oh, they find out early. This means that you might find out a little bit earlier, maybe a month earlier than early action. Early decision, this is more beneficial to the institution because they have specific numbers that they can guarantee that are coming in also at cost. Okay, so you're buying that car sticker price. Okay, so you are not, surely you're saying, yes, I'm very interested in this school, but by applying early decision, it's not going to get you into that school if you wouldn't have gotten in early action anyways. Okay, so be mindful. Do I want to have opportunities? Do I want to have choices? Do I want to see what offers roll in from my other schools? Because I am the customer. Remember that unfortunately, education at the institutional level is also a business. So being mindful of being that consumer and having opportunities to make choices. All right, both of these you find out early, both fantastic. Um, it's nice to get it out of the way. There is typically a good percentage of the pool that is, it's pretty rigorous. So applying early, you're saying I am good to go with my senior grades. I don't really need to lean on my senior grades. I have a strong application when I'm applying early, and I'm going to find out early. Okay. If you apply early action and the school says, well, we really like your application. We're really interested in you as a student, but we want to see how you're doing with your senior year. They could defer you to the regular application pool, and this means that they just take your application and they drop it in the regular application pool. You do not need to do anything else. You don't need to redo your application or resubmit anything. We will automatically resend your semester grades for senior year, and then they'll roll out their decision. Okay, if they defer you, they're going to look at your application again. You don't send anything new. Okay. So that's important to think about, applying early action. If I'm on the fence, I'm going to find out something early, okay? If they deny you early action, they're saying, I'm so sorry, but there's nothing that you could have done senior year. There's nothing that you could have done to change our mind, okay? You could have gotten A's in all your senior classes, and that still wouldn't change your mind. So applying early action, you're going to find out one way or another. But this is also going to be a stronger application pool. So if a college is saying, I'm going to accept about 20% of our students in early action and 20% of our students in early decision, it's typically actually less, maybe 10% early decision, then more students might be getting deferred. But your application is going to be looked at again in January anyways, and you're not going to have to do anything else. So you're not going to have to worry about getting that application in again later. Okay, so this is for schools that you are strongly considering. You definitely want to apply to. Applying regular, this is going to be, some students say, well, what about my backup schools? Well, we don't talk about backup schools because you shouldn't have a backup school. Backup schools are typically schools a student doesn't really want to go to. So regular application might be, well, of the 7, I'm going to apply for early action because I really want to find out early because maybe I don't need to spend that extra money on those other applications. Okay, so this could be a financial decision to apply regular. You might be saying, well, I'm going to save maybe 2 applications that are about $70 each and apply regular if I don't get in. But be mindful, if you apply early action, are you going to know by January or February? Sometimes you know by December or January when you apply early action, but that's going to cut it close, okay? So you might still have to have your application ready to go. So you might still be doing that work. So thinking about what is the priority and how am I going to, what's my end goal with these, 3 to 7 schools? Okay, priority deadline. This is going to be linked into the financial aid deadline. So you need to have your FAFSA done early, okay? We're going to talk about that in a minute. But March 1st is the typical deadline for Virginia schools, and pretty much most of them across the country for priority. So you really want to get your applications in no later than March 1st for priority. And then rolling is going to be once you get your application in, once they have all the materials that they need, they'll make a decision typically within a month, and they'll turn around and give you the decision. Okay, so these schools aren't necessarily filling up spots at a percentage level like I had mentioned with early action, early decision, and regular. They're going to be admitting and denying and deferring as they go through the process. Okay, so rolling would be deferred if you applied earlier in the school year. They might want to see your senior grade, something like that. So rolling is going to be as you apply, you get your information in, they will get back to you. We see that. I think WVU is rolling, just as an example. So how to choose which deadline? I just talked a bit about this. Sorry for speaking ahead. But thinking about, what is my academic record? Which application is going to be the strongest when I apply? And I really want you to be mindful that some schools link their scholarships to early action. So it's important that if you are looking for money to have support with going to college, VCU is a great example that if you apply to their early action deadline in November, they're automatically going to consider you for their scholarships. So if you apply regular, it's too late. Okay, so it's important for you to think about, of my schools, that short list of schools, what deadline do I want to apply to? Which one's going to give me the most opportunities and choices? Okay. So this is just a visual of a lot of the things we just covered. All right. So, and please be mindful that some schools that are self-reported school, or I'm sorry, academic self-reported schools, so meaning the student types in their own grades. So Virginia Tech and Penn State are two schools that, off the top of my head, do this. There are some Florida schools as well, where the student actually doesn't need to send a transcript. In the college application, it says, student, please create a student academic self-reported record. Okay, so you would go to Virginia Tech, you'd go and create a SARS account and type in your entire transcript. Okay, so this is very time consuming. But this means that they're not looking at your senior grades. They're going to see what classes you're taking, which are very important. That's why we've been waiting on transcripts, to make sure that your work in progress is covered on your transcript, so that you have your work in progress. But they're not going to be going off of your senior grades. Okay, so being mindful of, if they're not going off my senior grades, well, I should apply early anyways. So then the question is early action or early decision. Actually, I think Tech only has early decision or regular. I think their regular is kind of early though. So be mindful of what the college is offering and what's required of you regarding even transcripts, which we're going to talk about. There are 3 different application platforms when you apply to college. Sometimes you get to choose and sometimes you don't, okay? So some schools are partnered with the Common Application, some are partnered with the Coalition, and some, they have their own application on their website. So like George Mason, you can apply directly on George Mason's website, create a guest account and click apply, or you can add George Mason to your Common Application. Okay, so how do you know which application to do? Well, we need to look at your list of 3 to 7 schools to see what application do they take. Okay, I don't want you completing the common application and then none of your schools take it, because it's a very long application. So with Common App and Coalition, it's one application, all general information about you, where you live, who's your family, what school do you go to, and then each college has their own essay prompts. Okay, so you still have to pay a separate application fee for every college, but you do one generic profile application, and then you do separate applications for like essays. Okay, the difference between Common App and Coalition. Coalition simply has a little bit more access to fee waivers. So if you are in a situation where you think you might qualify for a fee waiver and the college offers a coalition application, you might choose to go that route because it's simply, they have some boxes that you would check that would give you the information, and a fee waiver would automatically be applied. Whereas Common App or direct institution applications, you typically have to contact the college to get a fee waiver code, which is like a code that you would enter into your Common App or the application itself. Okay, so of all of these applications, only the Common App has to be matched in Naviance. Okay, so you have to match your Common App in Naviance because that's how we send Common App documents. Coalition doesn't have any specific documents. We send a NACAC form that they take through Common App. So you only need to match your Common App in Naviance. But all of your schools still need to be listed in Naviance so that we can send your transcripts and your letters. Okay? Go back to your application checklist to make sure that you watch the videos on how to do that. There's also a video on how to request a transcript. Your initial transcript includes your senior transcript with your work in progress, a secondary school report, which are a lot of questions that the counselor has to complete for every single student for every transcript request, and a school profile. Okay, so that's why it takes us a bit of time, because we're also doing all the other jobs that we need to do to support students in addition to sending transcripts. So your initial transcript also includes the mid-year transcript. So this will go out in February. We send it to any school that you already created, that you already requested an initial transcript for. Okay, so you don't need to request a separate transcript for your mid-year. We automatically do that for any initial. Okay, and so we're asking for 10 to 15 school days to process this transcript. Okay, this means it could be done the very first day we get it, because you went through all your steps. So by the time we get your transcript request form, we're good to go and we can get in there and send it. But an emergency could happen, and we're really supporting a student in a family in a crisis situation, and so it might take us, we might get to that 10th day to process it. So we don't know, but there's about a 10 to 15 day processing window. So please prepare for that when you think about your deadlines. So this is how it works. The parent or guardian needs to log into Parent View and sign the FERPA consent in the Parent View Return to Learn packet. Okay, if you go to the college checklist, there are links to videos and a help guide to do this. It is so important that the parent or guardian checks the box that says consent. If a parent just signs this, a guardian just signs this, and they don't check the box, the FERPA is not approved. Okay, that means that the parent did not give their consent. Okay, so it's really, really important that you check that box. Okay, so parent guardian does this. The secretary is pulling a report and counseling every day, and they are activating in Naviance permissions so that students can request their transcripts. So we get the report, the secretary activates it. So now the student can go into their Naviance account under colleges I'm applying to, and they can request transcripts. Okay, so they can click the request transcript button and add their and select the schools that they want to apply to, or that they want us to send a transcript to. Okay, in here it will also say if the school requires a transcript, so be mindful, look out for that. If it already says initial materials submitted, that means that the school is not requiring a transcript. Okay. Also very important that the college is listed, the deadline is correct, and the way that you're applying is listed, okay? So there's no question marks in the computer screens. It's either a Common App or an empty computer screen or a stamp that's telling us how to send the documents. If you need to update that, you need to click Edit. All right, so you requested in Naviance, you made sure everything is good to go so we can send it. You've matched your Common App if you need to. Now the student needs to complete the electronic transcript request form. This is the indicator. This is like the mechanism that tells the secretary to confirm that Naviance has been done, to confirm that payment has been processed. This is what is then sent to the counselor, okay? So while you might have 7 schools listed in Naviance, you've requested 3 of those schools. You're going to add those 3 schools to the electronic transcript form and send that off. You can fill this form out as many times as you'd like. Okay, the first 3 transcripts in any scholarship transcripts and NCAA are all free, okay? You do not need to do the online quick payment until you've asked for your 4th transcript, okay? That's when it's $5 each. So anything beyond 3 transcripts for colleges, you're gonna pay $5 each, and you're gonna log into Prince William County Student Quick Pay. A parent, guardian needs to create an account, add your student, so create account, and submit your payment. All right, so if you submit this electronic transcript request form for 4 schools, those 4 schools are not going to be processed until that $5 payment comes in. So the secretary is monitoring this entire process. So watch the video, click on the links in the college application checklist that you have so that you know how to do this process. Okay, I will briefly go over paying for college because we have some information nights coming up that are going to go into this more deeply. But there are so many different ways that you can have support financially for college. So through the FAFSA, you could qualify for grants, which is free money from the government. That's going to be needs-based. It's going to be based on your family's income from 2019 taxes. Loans, every student qualifies for a loan, a $5,400 loan, so regardless of your family's income. So these are loans that have to be paid back, and it will depend on if the loan is accruing interest while you're in college or out of college, okay? So you have to do the FAFSA to see what you get, but every student should do the FAFSA, and we'll talk about that. So these are the financial aid nights. It's all virtual for Prince William County. And then there is a FAFSA demo that we're doing on October 5th at 2 p.m. So this information has been emailed out to students to sign up and to their families. So be sure to look for these virtual opportunities. Of course, there are other pathways to take to also have support for school financially. So you could say, well, I want to go to a trade school. I want to work in a specific industry where I could have an apprenticeship or do an internship. So like Lockheed Martin has an amazing apprenticeship opportunity actually, where you work full time for them, you earn benefits to do tuition reimbursement, and maybe you choose to go to Nova or George Mason while you're working during the day. So you take classes at night, right? Or you might say, well, hey, I want to join the military. I want to serve. So maybe I'm going to do ROTC or I'm going to enlist. And when I'm enlisted, I'm going to maybe do some online classes or CLEP some classes to take some assessments to see if I can earn college credit. Or I want to do the reserves. So we'll talk about that. Like you could do the reserves while you're in college and serve your time. So serve your country and earn your time while you're doing that. So with the FAFSA, does the application guarantee me free money? No, you might not get a grant, but everybody gets a loan. So this is money that is available. A loan is money that's available to help pay for school. So say your family could benefit from that $5,000. You want to do the FAFSA, and parents can also apply for a parent loan through the government. So when do you do the FAFSA? It opens up October 1st of your senior year. And you need to do this every year that you're in college, okay, to see what your financial aid package will be. Well, where in the world do you find your financial aid package? This is actually going to be from the college, okay? So you get your financial aid package or your award letter typically in the spring. So this is why we say, if you can wait till May 1st till decision day to make a decision, we want you to have all the information to make a decision, okay? We don't want you taking opportunities off the table without knowing the financial package. So it's like buying a car without getting the finances in order to see, well, oh my goodness, I could have bought this car for much less cost. So we want you to get all the information from your college. You will check your student portal for that college to see what information they need from you. 1 in 3 students get audited for the FAFSA, so they might need some more information from you, and that's just the government process. But your financial aid package will also include any scholarships that you might have earned at that college, okay? So whether they automatically considered you or you filled out an application to be considered at that college, that will be in your application package from the college. So you need to check your student portal at the college level. Okay, if I don't need the money, should I still complete the application? Yes, because some scholarships are tied to your FAFSA, which means you have to have a FAFSA on file for the institution to release that federal aid. So there could be state funding that you've earned, whether it might even be merit-based based on your grades. The institution, the college might still need a FAFSA on file. So we encourage students, everybody to complete the FAFSA and do it every year. We don't want you to take anything off the table. So again, we said, yes, parents, regardless of what they make, you should do the FAFSA. Should you reach out to the FAFSA people to find out how much you're getting? No. Every college is actually required to have a net price calculator, so you can go onto any college's financial aid website and actually type in, put a little bit of information about your family so that you can see what you expect to pay at this college, which is really, really good because this financial component is a huge part that doesn't get talked about often enough at the dinner table or with families. So I support myself, and so I don't have to include my parents on the FAFSA form. That's not exactly true. So if you get insurance coverage from your family, like you're going to need to contact your family to get their information for the FAFSA. So there's a lot of situations that might come up. I only have to fill out the FAFSA form once. Nope, you do it every year in October, every year that you're in college. There's only one FAFSA deadline, that's not until June. That is not correct. Everybody has a deadline, so whether it's state, school, or federal, again, you really want to get this done as soon as possible. So in October, November is the best time to do it, no later than March 1st. Okay, no later than March 1st. You don't want to deal with like no more money left in the bucket. Can I share my FSA ID with my parents? This is the login to your FAFSA, and the answer is no, because your FSA ID is linked to your name, so your parents can log in with their own FAFSA to your account, because the FSA ID is actually how they sign the FAFSA. So you would sign with your own FSA ID, and they sign with their own FSA ID. We are having a demo on how to do the FAFSA, again, October 5th, 2 p.m. So this will be recorded and sent out to families and students, so this will walk you through it. Remember, we talked about different ways to support yourself financially. The National Guard has an amazing scholarship opportunity. So for students where you can go to college and maybe you're not doing ROTC, you're actually active and serving, and so you do your monthly assignment at the base that you're assigned with while you're in college to do your service and earn time. So there are several events going on throughout the year. More is going to be coming. These are all virtual events as of now, so we'll see what happens in the spring. But we really want you to stay connected. So follow Battlefield Counseling on Instagram or BFHS Counseling on Twitter. We have a counseling SMORE newsletter that's embedded in the weekly Bobcast. Please check that because there's so many different ways. Everybody's getting so many emails that I think information's being missed. So please check that newsletter in the Bobcast under the Counseling Center. I think it's at the top of the SMORE, the newsletter. And then also we're waiting to get our Counseling Canvas course. So students and parents can all be a part of that course and receive all this information. Seniors should be completing their senior conference now, and they should have completed the senior needs assessment in Naviance prior to seeing their counselor. Those are student counselor appointments. If a parent wishes to meet with a counselor, that needs to be an email request so that more time can be planned and around the student's academic schedule so that that conversation can be had. Students, please reach out to your counselor. Remember that your school counselor, your caseload counselor is the counselor that needs to be writing your letter of recommendation if you need a counselor letter, because that is the counselor of record. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, please reach out.